And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fifth and final part of the show, we are going to talk about the Las Vegas Raiders. I wanted to talk about some things they had to say regarding their quarterback situation. So let's get right into that. So I wanted to talk about what Raiders general manager Tom Telesco had to say about the position specifically. So the Raiders, they're kind of going into the season with Gardner Minshew and AidanO'Connell. They're going to compete for that starting job. So this is what he had to say. That's the plan, is to have both those guys really compete through the offseason program, but more so in training camp, and we'll see how it plays out. I thought Aidan did an excellent job last year in a really difficult situation where the head coach changed, the coordinator changed, and he played really good football down the stretch. I've had a chance to be around him a little bit more in the building, and you kind of see the quarterback intangibles that are there, which is nice to have, that you have to have as a franchise quarterback. And then with Gardner, Gardner played well last year with the Colts. I mean, he was in the Pro Bowl, so obviously had a pretty good year. He's always performed at a high level when he's given the opportunity. So to have those guys here competing for the job, we'll see how it goes. Now, for me personally, I mean, I would lean towards Gardner Minshew being the starter. But again, that's my opinion. But yeah, I mean, Aidan O'Connell did what he was supposed to do. I mean, he managed the game. I mean, especially you go back and you look at his stats from the Kansas City game on Christmas. I mean, he didn't complete a pass after the first quarter. So, and with the Raiders last season, 2,200 yards passing, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Actually, I wanted to go back to his stats from the Chiefs game. So yeah, he went 9 of 21 for 62 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. That's all he was asked to do. Complete 9 passes, and that's it. Just hand the ball off. Because Zamir White had a big game, had 145 yards rushing. And the reason why I remember that number is because that was against me in my fantasy playoffs. So still stings. But yeah, I mean, he passed for 244 against the Broncos, 299 against the Colts. He had 2 touchdowns in both of those games. I told you the Kansas City stats. Against the Chargers had a good game. I mean, a lot of people had a good game against the Chargers. They won 63-21. 248 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. And then against the Vikings, he was 21 of 32, 171 yards, no touchdowns and a pick. And the Raiders lost that game 3-0. Yeah, that was a weird 2-game stretch because they got shut out 3-0 at home, and then they put up 63 points against the Chargers. So, but yeah, his QBR was 40.5 last year. But yeah, I mean, those were his stats. But you know what? Listen, won a few games for the Raiders. Won 3 of the 5 games that he started. It was a close game against the Colts and the Vikings. Also he played against the Dolphins. I don't know why they don't. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so those are just some of his games, but also played against the Chiefs at home. They lost that game. They lost against the Dolphins. He threw 3 picks. They did beat the Jets 16-12. I know, I was going to say, I'm like, wait, I thought he played in more games, but yeah, it's because they weren't showing all of them. I'm looking at ESPN. They beat the Giants 30-6. He was put in against the Bears because Brian Hoyer started that game. He went 10 of 13, 75 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And then he also did start against the Chargers, the first day of October. He went 24 of 39, 238 yards, no touchdowns and a pick, and he got sacked 7 times, and 6 of those came off of Khalil Mack. Because Khalil Mack had a massive game there. Yeah, he had 6 sacks in that. But yeah, so he actually did win, 5 games as the starter for the Raiders. So, and that because they made the switch because Jimmy Garoppolo just did not play well. And they did have Brian Hoyer, but yeah, AidanO'Connell, he started most of the games because the quarterback position was not was a kind of a carousel last year. And then let's look at Gardner Minshew's stats. So yeah, the Colts went 9-8 last season, and Minshew, he came in when Anthony Richardson went down, and Minshew played well. he finished. Yeah, he had 3,300 yards passing, 15 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. Played in the Pro Bowl. But yeah, so let's look at his best game from last season. Probably came against the Colts or against the Titans in overtime. He went 26 of 42, 312 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions in that game. Again, the Colts finished 9-8, and they were very close to making the playoffs, but he had that crucial drop on 4th down, and the Texans got the ball back, and that was the end of the game basically. But Minshew, he played well, and I feel like he's gonna get the starting job, in my opinion. But that's just me. I think that he's the better option of the two. But I feel like whoever gets the starting job, they do have a decent amount of playmakers around him. You got Davante Adams, you got Jacoby Myers, Trey Tucker. They're now going into his second year. He was making plays for him. You obviously got Brock Bowers now in the mix. So, and the running back position, we'll see how that plays out. But I think Zamir White's probably going to get the starting job. Right now, yeah, you got him, and they brought in Alexander Madison, who was not coming off of a good year. But, like I said, and they also brought in Michael Gallup as well. So, you got playmakers. I think this offense could be decent. I think it just really all comes down to the quarterback play. And the defense should be improved. They brought in Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins to go with Max Crosby. So, I don't think the Raiders are going to be a playoff team, but I feel like with Minshew they could be decent. Kind of hang around till late in the season, But I don't think the long-term answer is on the roster here. I think the Raiders, they're going to have to try to figure it out elsewhere. Now, I know that Marcus Spears said this on ESPN that, there's a quarterback that could be on the market, that could hit free agency and is looking for a new deal. Now, you're going to have to pay a lot to get him, but Dak Prescott, I think the Raiders, they could be a team that, could be in the mix to get him. Now, it all depends on how, I guess. Gardner Minshew, you kind of know what he is. He's a backup quarterback. We haven't really seen. We kind of saw what Aidan O'Connell could do. I don't really think he's a long-term answer, but maybe Aidan O'Connell comes out and he has a really good 2024, and then maybe the Raiders say, hey, this is our franchise guy, but I don't think so. I think the Raiders could be a team, I agree, that maybe watch out for them when it comes to, Dak Prescott if he doesn't go back to Dallas. I could see that. And I think that'd be a good situation for Dak because you have a lot of playmakers on that side of the ball. And I think that could be a spot you can go and put up good numbers with Davante Adams, who's, still got some good years left in him. Now he's in his 30s, but he's still Davante Adams. I'm expecting him to have a good season here. I think that'd be a good spot for Dak. Now, I don't know how far the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders will get that far with Dak either. I think the best you get is, the second round because that's really all he's been able to do his whole career. But with Dak, if the Raiders are looking for a quarterback, they should definitely try to make a push to maybe get Dak Prescott. And Eric, who's still in the chat, said he would be great there. Yeah, again, with that supporting cast, and, I think with Antonio Pierce, who's a defensive-minded guy, well, from playing defense, just looking at it from that angle, part of some good defenses with the Giants. I think that would be a good spot for him. Now, you'd be in the same division as Patrick Mahomes, and you figure now with Harbaugh as the coach of the Chargers, they're going to be a better team. And I don't really know what to expect out of the Broncos right now with Sean Payton, but yeah, that would be a tough division to get put in as opposed to the NFC East, which has kind of been a cakewalk his whole career. Outside of the Eagles, who've been their number one competition, but yeah, it'd be a tough division, but I think it'd be a good spot for him. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But that was just I know that was one thing that I saw not too long ago. Something again that Marcus Spears said from ESPN that maybe the Raiders could maybe inquire on Dak. So we'll see. But yeah, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Eric, thank you for tuning into the show. I'll see you in a little bit and for the production meeting. Also, he's called Easy E. Now, when I think of Easy E, I think of Eli Manning. So that's a compliment in its own right. Yeah, so like I said, make sure to tune into Eric's show. I know it's depending on where you are, it's 11:30 p.m. Eastern time, but on the West Coast it's 8:30 p.m. West Coast time. So, wherever you are, just kind of figure out how that applies to you. But yeah, make sure to tune into his show. Make sure to tune into all the other shows as well on the network. I got more shows that are starting up. That pretty much cover every sport almost. So yeah, make sure to tune into everybody else's shows. I know the NBA playoffs is still going on. Baseball in full swing. So the hockey playoffs as well. The golf podcast. We got it all pretty much. Women's sports. I know Caitlin Clark's WNBA debut is coming up, so I think it's actually tonight. So, make sure to check out the women's sports podcast, the Hoops and Heels podcast. It's what it's really called. Yeah. So make sure to check out everybody's shows. Eric just said, "Bro, best compliment I have ever received." I appreciate that. I think you've probably gotten better compliments than that. There's no way that I was the best compliment. I've given you the best compliment ever. I don't think so. But I appreciate that. But yeah, so make sure to check out all the other shows. Eric, again, appreciate you tuning in, as well as everybody else that's tuned in today. So with that is all the time that we have for today. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.